So we've talked about a lot in Season 1 so far, and while we discussed the top 10 weapons that I think you should be using within Warzone 2 so far, we've yet to touch on the multiplayer side of things. If Warzone isn't necessarily your cup of tea, what should you be running now with the expanded weaponry on offer in Season 1? Today we're going to be running down my picks for the top 10 weapons and a few builds for them in Modern Warfare 2 Season 1. Let me know your thoughts down below as we go along. Is there anything in particular you'd add or subtract to this list? Feel free to let me know, but if you enjoyed the video, you find it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it, and if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, and anything COD related. We're chasing down 600,000 subscribers, so if you'd like to join us, I'd love to have you in the community. And finally, make sure to check out my friends over at GamerAdvantage who have a killer deal going on right now for the holidays, with some pairs of blue light glasses being upwards of 40% off with code espresso, but more on them in a bit. For now, let's take a look at Modern Warfare 2's top 10 weapons of Season 1. First, it's important to note that a defined air quote meta, if we want to call it that, is still not entirely there yet, and unlike Warzone 2, there's a handful of notable differences. The biggest being the lack of armor and engagements, so time to kill, or TTK as we'll refer to it in this video, is really fast at most distances, and weaponry we discuss is prioritizing things like that TTK value as well as damage per round, along with a handful of other classification-specific attributes. Things like handling, mobility, recoil control, among others. So all that considered, let's jump into it with a statistically beast of a weapon, that being the RAAL MG. So the RAAL statistically is the best MG by a mile in this game. Arguably, depending on versatility, there's a debate that it might be the best gun in the entire game. Statistically speaking, it's kind of wild how far it is above the rest of the LMGs, but with a damage per round of 50, outwards of 41 meters, and dropping only to 46 damage at 42 meters indefinitely, it's a two-shot without headshots, even outwards to ranges that exceed your long-shot ranges. So that's insane that it carries so much damage over that kind of distance. That makes it an astonishingly quick 192 millisecond TTK, bested only by the Seiken in the TTK department in the LMGs, simply due to fire rate. But the RAAL reclaims that title as fastest TTK in the LMG category at 36 meters and beyond, and by a large margin at that point. Now for this, I ended up running an optic of your choice. For me, it's always just a red dot, or in the case of this, the Cronin Mini Pro, which is a blue dot. I end up running the 21-inch Rhino barrel to offer up a little bit more recoil control and additional bullet velocity. I end up running a muzzle here on this one just because I kind of play around with this like how I'd kit it out for Warzone, just so across the board it's kind of uniform in that nature for me that I'm used to it. Then I'll run the Dune grip for a little bit more aim walking stability as well as steadiness and recoil steadiness. And the final thing I'll toss on is the 50-round belt mag, so I get a little bit more movement speed, ADS speed, and sprint to fire speed back, along with recoil quickness. Because it is something that kills so fast, I'm not really needing something of like 75 to 100 rounds per magazine. I can get the job done with 50, and then I get more handling on top of this. And again, because it is something with such a low fire rate and also it's such a heavy weapon, you can make a little bit more room for those mobility attributes as opposed to hard kitting it just for recoil control. Now, you can tune stuff to your preference and to your liking. We'll have a video here coming out tomorrow or the next day talking about tuning a little more in depth, because there's a bit more to it than meets the eye, and it's not quite as simple as simply scrolling all the way up or down or all the way to the right or left, but more on that in a little bit. Again, tune it to how you feel comfortable, but beyond that, we're going to talk about the Kastov 7.62, a rifle that is the most consistent rifle in play. It ranks 4th in the TTK among rifles upwards of 15 meters, coming in at a TTK of 200 milliseconds, but it slowly then beats out the competition one by one at a further distance beyond that. It becomes the 3rd best rifle in TTK at 16 meters, the 2nd best rifle in TTK at 22 meters, and finally it becomes the best rifle in TTK at 29 meters, at which point it's the best TTK over distance until 45 meters. So you got a big window where it's very viable in terms of options for what you can use. So if you're looking for a weapon that's absolutely going to get those long shots done with ease, you'll be in luck with this one. In fact, not even just TTK wise, it shares the highest damage properties of the rifle category until 21 meters, then holds that title exclusively for any range beyond that in rifles. Still holding a 35 damage per shot value, even outwards to 45 meters, meaning that it's a 3-shot kill to the chest at that point, not even mixing in any headshot multipliers. Now, in full transparency, we are going to talk about a handful of rifles here upcoming in the next few weapons. I need to say that there's an asterisk on the rifle data, because what we're discussing in this video does take into account the M16, but statistically speaking, while the M16 has the best damage per round and as a result the fastest TTK, the way some sites compile this data is a bit deceiving. Compiled data will display this as if every round is accurate, whereas that quite literally is impossible. It's never going to happen with the M16, because at the best, you're landing maybe 2 rounds of a burst at exactly where you're aiming. I'm not saying that the 3rd shot will just automatically disappear off the body, but if you're aiming at a head or at a chest, you're only going to have probably about 2 of those shots land exactly where you're aiming the way the weapon kick is. So when the raw stats detail a potential TTK of 148 milliseconds outwards of 45 meters, you'd quite literally need to be cheating to obtain that value. It's not even about recoil control. The base weapon fire pattern is just not consistent on where the player is shooting through each burst. Now, for a 7.62 build, I'd recommend a red dot or some optic of your choice. I end up running on a lot of my rifles lasers to end up getting some ADS speed and sprint to fire speed back. That's something that really doesn't sacrifice much in that, especially if you can end up dealing with the laser being visible to your enemies. That's not something that's the biggest deal to me, though if it is to you, totally understandable. There are other lasers that don't have any cons associated with them at all. So I'll end up running the FSS OLV laser. Then I'll end up running, depending on where I want to play gunfights, anywhere from the IG K30 406mm barrel or the CAS 10 584mm barrel. The 584mm barrel is going to be way better for further distances. So again, if you want to play to the strengths of the 7.62, this is the better one to go with. So I'd recommend that. I end up running the 40 round magazine just because I like having more ammunition on hand, especially whenever there is nothing like fully loaded. I'll get roughly about 20 more rounds in reserve as opposed to no magazine attached. And then I'll run the True Tac grip as well for a bit more sprint to fire speed and ADS speed. Beyond that, the Kastov 74U is the next weapon I want to talk about. And I've said it from the beginning, the 74U is a strange hybrid this year where it has the mobility of some SMGs, but the damage of some rifles, and that still holds up. But statistically speaking, this follows just behind the 7.62 in terms of the important areas. TTK, it's ranked second among rifles with 184 millisecond TTK outwards of 21 meters, and in damage per round, it's tied for first with a 7.62 outwards of 21 meters as well. The problem is, once you hit that 22 meter range and beyond, there is a sharp drop off. So this is something that you'll want to use and thrive with in closer quarters engagements. So if you can do that, that's totally cool. Now, with that in mind, you don't want to really kit this out for longer range. You kind of want to play for a little bit more of that quick, snappy nature of something that can help you out in closer quarters engagements. For me, I don't necessarily need to run an optic on this one. The iron sights are totally fine to me on the 74U. For this though, I'll run the FSS OL laser again for that snappy sprint to fire and aim down sight speed. The 330mm barrel though, I'd still choose for that hip recoil control, the regular recoil control and bullet velocity. Beyond that, I'd run the 45 round magazine, the True Tac grip, and the R7 stock. These all giving you a bit more sprint to fire speeds while also giving you some more ammo to work with. Now, if you want to, you can sacrifice that grip for something like a muzzle or perhaps an underbarrel, maybe an ammunition type, but that's entirely subjective. Now, beyond that, we're going to talk about the STB556. This one is surprisingly the fastest TTK of all rifles, but only upwards of 15 meters. Then it drops off significantly, but it's nice because like the 74U, it has some pretty decent handling and is relatively easy to manage in that recoil as well. So you're not really going to be fighting the weapon too much in terms of control going forward. Now for this, I'd recommend an optic, definitely. For me, again, the Cronin Mini Pro is my favorite here in Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer. I just do not like the iron sights. I think they're pretty intrusive in terms of what you're trying to look at aiming down sight. Then I'd run the VLK laser 7 milliwatt, then the 24.4 inch Bruin S620 barrel. That is one that's going to maximize your recoil control, especially at a distance, which is definitely nice here at that. I run the 42 round magazine. You don't necessarily need to if you feel comfortable with 30 rounds, but I like having that extra 12 rounds to work with. And then I run the Bruin HCR 56 stock as well. Putting that together, it is something that has very minimal recoil, especially at distance, so it'll be nice to have that you can challenge any mid to long range gunfight. The TAC 56 is the final one that we'll talk about here in the first half of this, and the TAC is a preferred weapon of mine because it's so consistent. This is a weapon that initially it's not the best, ranking bottom half in terms of TTK among rifles, but granted, the difference from first to last is only 30 milliseconds, so it's not too far removed from the running, and in the damage category, it's middle of the pack, but the sustained potential for kills is where it really makes up for it all. The TAC 56's TTK is the furthest reaching TTK in consistency, holding a sub 200 millisecond TTK until 31 meters, and its max damage also extending outwards to 31 meters, making it a 3-shot with a proper shot placement that entire time. Add that in with minimal recoil, and you're cooking. For the TAC 56 build, I'd recommend the optic of the Cronin Mini Pro. Again, just my personal preference. If you have one that you prefer better, feel free to go ahead and equip that one. The FSS OV laser, the 17.5 inch Tundra Pro barrel. I'll run the 40 round magazine because 60, while it's nice to have that extra amount, and I'll definitely run it in Warzone, in multiplayer, I'll take that little bit of extra mobility that 20 less rounds will afford me. So I'm okay with that. 40 rounds is totally fine here at that one. Then I'll end up running the Demo Clean Shot grip for added sprint to fire and ADS speed, giving me a bit more snap. But again, as you can test out in the firing range, this thing has minimal recoil. So that's the first half here of these top 10, but before we continue, I want to let you know about my friends over at GamerAdvantage. You know the pitch by now, the most comfortable, lightweight, and durable frames on the market with clinically proven lenses. I've sworn by these guys for going on 2 years now, and I genuinely think that you'll love them as well. As with yesterday, the site-wide 25% off discount is still live until Monday, with 10% from code Espresso, boosting you to 35% off overall, but today, the Walden, Arbor, and Terra frames are 30% off site-wide as opposed to 25%, meaning that with code Espresso, those 3 frame designs are 40% off overall. Quite literally the best sale that we've seen all year with these sort of things. So if you guys want to learn more about the technology behind it, the science, they do a great job of breaking it down. That link's in the description below. But if you want to pick something up, use code Espresso to get yourself upwards of 35 to 40% off certain pairs. So if you're looking for a great holiday gift here for either yourself or somebody you know that is working on a computer, gaming a ton, or just maybe even on their phone 24/7, this is a great way to invest in your vision health and a great gift to give. So check the link in the description below, use code Espresso. But back to the top 10 weapons you should be using within Modern Warfare 2. Next up, we're going to talk about the RPK. The RPK, like I said, the RAAL was so far and away the best LMG in Modern Warfare 2 in so many categories, but the RPK is that second one. The second best because it's great with control, it's great with its TTK, it's great with its overall handling and decent mobility, so it's something you cannot go wrong with. Now, for the build on the RPK, this is one that you can kind of play around with and have a bit more freedom in terms of kitting for mobility. I'll run the Cronin Mini Pro just because I like having that, again, that pinpoint dot. Then I'd run the 584mm barrel. If I'm in Warzone, I'll probably take the 597 barrel just for that added damage range and bullet velocity. But since we are playing on maps that aren't going to stretch gunfights outwards of 60, 70, 80, even sometimes beyond 100 meters at a time, I'm okay with having a bit more movement speed and ADS speed here and opting for those default properties that we'll have with the RPK. Then I'll run the 40-round magazine, the True Tac grip for a bit more sprint to fire and ADS speed, and then I'll run the ProLite TL3 stock, which gives, again, more sprint speed, aim down sight speed, as well as aim walking speed and crouch movement speed. So again, kind of getting this more for mobility, taking away some of those LMG properties, while really not really taking away too much from the overall damage potential that it can do. So I'd recommend that as our RPK build. The BAS-P is a weapon that with Season 1 was a lot of fun to play around with when we get into the SMG category. The BAS-P, I think, is one that you have a bit more freedom with in terms of the build. The only really crutch attachment I'd say that you want is the 12-inch Bruin SZ36 barrel, which offers more bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil control. But beyond that, you can have some fun with it. For me, I end up running the VLK Laser 7mm. I'll run the 50-round magazine. I'll run the Bruin Flash grip for a bit more sprint to fire and ADS speed, and then the stock, it depends on what you want out of it. You can end up going with that stockless mod, or you can go with the Flash V4 stock, but again, a bit subjective on that one. Beyond that, the next SMG we'll go to is the Lachmann sub, your MP5 here. This is one that honestly I think is just a tried and true weapon. One of the weapons that, just like the M4, you can pick up and do well with, whether you're a veteran or you're a first-time player here with Modern Warfare 2. But if you kit it out properly, you can make this an absolute weapon that snaps on to enemies. This is something that you want to kit it out for mobility more so, and also a bit more close quarters play. You don't really need to care too much about the long range play. So for this, I'd run the VLK Laser 7mm, the FTAC M sub 12-inch barrel, the Forge DX90 suppressor, that's just personal preference for me, the 50-round drum mag, and then the stockless mod is what I'd round out that build with. Now, the final SMG we'll talk about here is the Fennec, which statistically speaking, surprisingly has the best properties at range. Now, you can kit this out for range if you'd like to, but it's something that I still think that it's probably going to do you best at closer quarters just because of that fire rate. You're going to be able to shred through enemies, but if you try and challenge things at a distance, that's where you might be susceptible to missing more shots, and as a result, with that fire rate, burning through ammo, needing to reload, and oftentimes running out of ammo. Long shots with this was an absolute pain. It's much more helpful in Tier 1, but if you did that within Core, well, you probably know the pain here of that one. But again, you run through so much ammo, especially at a distance. Before this, I'd recommend the VLK Laser 7mm, the Forge Tac Ninja Barrel, which offers more sound suppression, bullet velocity, and damage range, as well as recoil control. So you get that suppressor and the damage properties all in one. Then I'd recommend the Merc foregrip, so if you have to, you can get that hip fire and recoil steadiness. Then the 45-round magazine, you want this. That's just no way around that. You're gonna want more ammo in this, and if you've used it at all, I guarantee you know what I'm talking about. And finally, the FTAC stock cap is what I'd run, that sort of removed stock that offers up a bit more mobility in regards to how you can run around with a weapon. The final weapon that I'd talk about is the SPR. And for me, I use this just like a sniper rifle. Granted, yes, you can use quite literally any of the snipers to begin with, but with the added mobility as opposed to a sniper rifle category from the marksman, it's just a little bit faster if you're a more aggressive player in that regard. And for that, I'd end up running the FSS OV laser, the 22.5-inch Elevate 11 barrel. I'll end up running the Aim Assist 406 comb and the ZRL T70 pad extension stock. And if you want to throw on a scope, I'd recommend the Forge Tac Delta 4 optic. It's something that's a middle ground between a true sniper scope and then also it's not too intrusive as well. So that's a nice one to put on. Now, that said, that's my pick for the top 10 weapons here in Season 1. Is it fine if you have different weapons that you would recommend? Absolutely. Again, the nice part about Modern Warfare 2 and the weaponry on offer is that there's a very still minimal difference between how weapons will perform. There's so much in terms of that tight-knit TTK that you could use a different weapon and still perform very well. No questions asked on that, but it's just something that I've found these to be the ones that work best for me. So that's what we're going to call it. I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down below. Are you guys liking these weapons here that we've listed? Anything that you would add, subtract to this list? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts. But if you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, and anything COD related. We've got you covered here on the channel. So if you're interested, I'd love to have you in the community. For now, though, thanks so much for watching. My name's been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.